Hi. Today I'm going to be talking about a disease that you could have right now and have absolutely no idea you have it. It's called syphilis. Syphilis is an STD that's transmitted through sex primarily, but can also be transmitted by infected sores from the infected people that come into contact with your eyes, your mouth, your butt, your genitals. It comes from a virus called Treponema pallidum, which is a very small virus. It's one of the smallest viruses we know, actually. And it's very unique just because it has very little information encoded on it. It actually cannot produce any of its own aminos or anything else for that matter. It relies entirely on its host for all of its nutrients. It's a gram negative spirochete. It also causes other ones called Begel, which is endemic syphilis, which is not an STI, as well as one other version of it as well. Um, it's transmitted only among humans. It enters through your mucosal membranes, of course, and is primarily sexual contact, but it can also be transmitted from mother to child, in utero, or during birth. It's really slow to grow. It has an incubation period around 20 days and can range from 10 to 90 days. Very slow doubling time as well, so it takes 30 hours to double itself, which is incredibly slow for most viruses. It's also completely unable to survive outside of its host for more than a couple days just because it can't produce any of its nutrients needed to supply itself. It's got a helical shape. It lacks lipopolysaccharide. Also has endoflagellum, which work very differently than most other viruses because they lack a P ring, which is normally the function that they use to get around. Instead, it has a collar component as well, which is highly unusual. There's multiple different stages of infection. Typically, there's 3 different stages. There's primary, which lasts 2 to 6 weeks, secondary, which is 4 to 10 weeks, latent, which is divided into 2 stages, the early, less than 2 years, and the late, beyond 2 years. And sometimes it can develop into tertiary syphilis, which 3 to 15 years after infection typically. There's 3 different forms for it as well. The 3 different forms only develop in maybe 40% of people, so it's rare and it's only in long-term infections, typically like 3 to 10 years after the initial infection is when it develops, and they can affect all sorts of parts of your body. There's multiple ways to detect syphilis. You can get a VDRL, a rapid plasma reagent test. It can also be confirmed with TPHA and FTA-ABS labs, which are unusual. The virus is so small you can't see it initially. Only dark field microscopy of serous fluids can even detect it. That's why up until 1905 it was the first time that we were actually able to see the virus and detect what it was that was causing syphilis, just because we didn't have the technology to even observe it for a long time. You can also use dark fluorescent antibodies and PCR tests as well. There's no vaccine for it. Obviously, the best way to prevent an STI, condoms. Regular screenings, like getting an STI test, as well as prenatal tests, are very important for this virus, just so you can catch it because it's so latent in your system. We've known about this virus for millennia at this point, and up until 1400s and 1500s, it was not really present in Europe, but it was present in North America. So whenever we discovered people over in North America, it was one of the few diseases that came back to Europe with the Columbian Exchange, whereas the North Americans got all the other bad diseases that we'd had. One of the first treatments they discovered was mercury, mercury actually does cure the disease and, reduce most of its symptoms. The problem is, over time, you have to take more and more mercury, and the treatment eventually becomes more deadly than the disease and kills you anyways. Of course, it'll lead to heavy metals poisoning, and we used mercury to treat syphilis up until 1916. One of the first outbreaks in Europe was in Naples. It was spread by the French, and we'd just been getting it steadily from the New World, and that was the first time that it was really observed over in Europe as a major outbreak. Like, we didn't know a lot about it until then, but natives over in North America and South America had known about it for millennia prior. One of the first treatments that actually worked for it was arsenic. It was discovered in 1909 by Sahachiro Hata. It was an organo-arsenic compound. One of the first chemotherapeutic drugs ever developed, too. Then, in modern times, when we discovered penicillin, we also found that cured syphilis. Its effectiveness was verified in 1943, and we started using that as the primary treatment for syphilis afterwards. Up until that point, though, the 18th and 19th century, as much as 20% of the European population had been infected with syphilis at any given point in time for a century. It's crazy how fast it spread. Over in the United States, during the 1940s, the United States had a couple of secret experiments that we did. One was called the Tuskegee experiment. We had studied a group of black sharecroppers in Alabama. 399 of them were infected with it already, and 201 weren't. And we decided that we were going to test the long-term effects on them. We gave them free health care, free burial insurance, hot meals, all that. And, just studied them. It was supposed to be 6 months. It turned into a 40-year experiment. At the end of it, we offered them a final treatment, which was actually just a spinal tap, just so we could do diagnostics on it and see what was going on in their systems. We never treated these people. In fact, we never told them that they even had syphilis. We also did a study for 2 years, 1946 to 1948 in Guatemala, where we had doctors over there infect, just random people, soldiers, prostitutes, prisoners, mental patients. Then we treated them with antibiotics to see the effects. It still caused 83 deaths as a result of that experiment. We just never told them what they were infected with. And the same guy that headed these experiments, he headed both of the experiments, and none of them were ever told about it. They had a whistleblower blow the whistle on all this stuff in the 1970s, and it caused all of the modern informed consent, doctrines that we have for experimentation. Like, you have to also be confirmed for your treatments and your diagnosis as well during experiments, just because before then we did some highly unethical stuff. The current treatments we use are IM, benzathine, benzyl penicillin, doxycycline, and tetracycline for it. We also use IV penicillin G for late infections and pregnancy to clear it. Typically, treatments often result in what's called Jarczyk-Herxheimer reaction. It can last 24 hours after the treatment, and it's because lipoproteins from ruptured syphilis cells burst and explode and cause an adverse reaction inside your body. It usually clears on its own. In the world, there's 0.5% of adults globally infected with syphilis, 6 million new cases annually, 100,000 deaths annually. A lot of the issues that we have right now with syphilis are just because people stopped wrapping their stuff up and using condoms. If we practice more safe sex and had more regular testing, we probably wouldn't have the issues we have with syphilis today, but they're still on the increase. some of the signs and symptoms for it, like you'll usually just get one tiny sore wherever you got infected initially, and then you may not have symptoms at all for years. But when they do manifest, it's a non-itchy rash. You get wart-like sores, hair loss, muscle aches, fever, sore throat, fatigue, weight loss, swollen lymph nodes. Tertiary syphilis only develops a little bit. I included some pictures of what can happen with tertiary syphilis. It can affect your brain, nerves, eyes, heart, blood vessels, liver, bones, joints. It does some crazy stuff to your body. It can also be spread in utero as well, and also during birth, and can cause your baby to die prematurely. There's only one country on earth that's eliminated it, Cuba, and that's because they gave everybody in the entire country IV penicillin, and it wiped out the disease for the entire country. That's the great thing about socialized medicine. You can do anything with it because everybody's got it. But up until that point, we're still stuck with the disease. So keep it wrapped up.